Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's sessions on practical approaches to critical infrastructure. Again, my name is Joey St. Jacques. I'll be moderator for today's session, and I hope you enjoyed the presentations this morning. I did attend one on quantum computing, which is kind of our future coming up in critical infrastructure. And it's unfortunately there wasn't too many people in it, but there was a lot to learn. And so really, we're going to try and keep you awake this afternoon. Usually everyone has a big lunch. And so this is really your dessert. And there's a lot of calories we're going to throw at you across the board. We've all been in critical infrastructure for many years as end users, practitioners, physical, cyber, sales, integrator, and product development. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask about 5 to 10 questions, and we'll go through it. If you want to ask a question, we're going to hope maybe you ask them at the end. But if there's something pressing and you want to contribute, feel free to ask those questions. It's really about information sharing, what you're going to learn. And it was based on a report that the SIA Security Industry Association Utility Advisory Board on practical strategies and technology solutions in securing critical infrastructure, while supporting some of the frameworks, compliance requirement. And so really, it's about some of the challenges physical and cybersecurity practitioners in critical infrastructure have to deal with. And after putting this report together, we've learned a lot from it. But I also want to kind of hit home too, is that it's really, this is going to apply to everybody. Even if you're outside the SI critical infrastructure sector, it will apply. A lot of the best practices and everything we've done in the past can apply right away for you. And then, so what I was going to do is kind of do a quick introduction as the gentleman before. So again, I'm Joey St. Jacques. I've been 30 years in critical infrastructure. I started for a power utility, built out transformer stations, generating stations, renewables, SCADA systems. So really from the beginning all the way up. Then I was moved into physical and cybersecurity for the organization. I sit on a number of different boards from government as well on critical infrastructure. And then also I'm kind of moved into the cyber IT portfolio of financial institutes. So again, it comes down to a lot of compliance policies and securing infrastructure. And as I mentioned, I'm the chair of the SIA Utility Advisory Board.
I'm Jasveer Gill. I'm the founder and CEO of Alert Enterprise. But before Alert Enterprise, I was the founder and CEO of another company you might have never heard of, Versa, which was IT and cybersecurity company, which was acquired by SAP in 2006, called SAP GRC. We invented the word GRC. So in SAP, they call me father of GRC because we came up with that word. Giving access is easy. How do you make sure you give only the access that's needed to do your job? It cannot be misused. So it's used by that company, SAP GRC, used by more than 7,000 companies globally. The reason why I'm sharing that, Alert Enterprise idea, physical GRC idea came from those customers. These were very high profile utilities, oil and gas companies, other critical sectors. They said, oh, what you did was great. Imagine you have a home with 2 doors, you put lock on only 1 door. How safe are you? We need solutions that bridge the silos across IT physical security. So that's what we do today. And we are very, very excited about this session because it helps a lot. One of the things we'll share how it elevates CSO's value in the company, how it makes you look really good. So really looking forward to that. Okay. Thank you.
Chris Walcott, Chief Security Officer at Direct Defense. 25 years in the industry. I started on an IT help desk for a Fortune 200 energy company, Constellation Energy, the parent of Baltimore Gas and Electric. When I left there, I was Director of IT and OT risk and compliance for power generation. So we had 34, 37 power plants, depending on how you look at it. I went from there with SunGuard, helped run threat and vulnerability management there for 3 years, 7 years with Black & Veatch in the security risk and compliance practice, and was Deputy CISO there for 3. And then I've been with Direct Defense for 8 years. So going from system owner to consulting to governance, and I'm on a couple of the NERC committees, American Waterworks Association, SME, so my name is in the J100 standard. Really focused kind of across the board on trying to secure cybersecurity, physical security, critical infrastructure, and put the pieces together. from a practitioner standpoint, getting down in the weeds and then being able to bring it back up and explain it to the executives. Spent a lot of time doing that in my career.
I'm Nick Weber. I've been in the critical infrastructure space since 2009. Started out with doing vulnerability assessments for Homeland Security, Office of Infrastructure Protection, now CISA. Was doing that through the military and then transitioned into being a headquarters employee, energy sector specialist, where I got a drink from a fire hose every day for a couple of years, learning all the different pieces that come into play with North American critical infrastructure. From there, I went out and started doing auditing for NERC-CIP out in WEC in the Western region to get a little closer to home. After that, spent some time at Grant Public Utility District, a mid-size vertically integrated power company, where I started off doing physical security, and they realized I knew NERC-CIP, and I got pulled into compliance. So it's kind of like Hotel California. Once you're in, you never get out. Yeah. Did that for a while, and then moved on to the consulting side, where I've been for the last 7 years.
So again, today's topic, physical cybersecurity. You're going to hear about that quite a bit, the converged model. Jasper and I presented a number of years ago back at ISC West in Vegas, and it was a packed house. And it seems to be still a topic today when we walk around. Integration and implementation, so technology, we'll focus on technology. The chair of ASIS was presenting or was talking about this today, about technology and where it's going, how it's important for this group as well. Supply chain, vendors and third-party risk. We get into AI, a bit of cloud. We can touch on quantum if we want to. And then compliance. These are risk assessments, leadership, security awareness, and then emerging threats. So we'll start with the first question, and this happens a lot, and Chris will probably talk a bit more on this. So what are the most common pitfalls you've encountered when integrating physical and cyber controls? And how can organizations avoid these costly mistakes during implementation? And this is really focused, what I've seen in the past, even when we've done TRAs and that, where the physical security practitioner in an organization will connect up cameras, edge devices, and not secure them.
This is a pen tester's favorite way in. Number one, without doubt, one of the best ways that we find when we're going to break into a company is we go looking for unsecure cameras, NVRs, card access readers, edge processing. These are devices a lot of times that get wired or cabled by electrical installers, and they get installed by technicians who are focused on camera quality and function and integration with card access and the total access control solution, and not necessarily cybersecurity practitioners who understand what it means to turn on or off a particular streaming protocol or leave the functional capability there for remote application of software updates. My software update's not going to be quite as friendly as the manufacturer's version. So understanding what the pieces are that you need to be aware of and the kind of questions you need to ask. It's not necessarily that you need to be the expert or that even that your integrator vendor needs to be the expert. Somebody in the room needs to have that understanding and be able to ask the right questions and be able to put the protocols in place, give you the guardrails to make sure that you're not left with something that is the gaping hole that we're going to walk through.
Next question. Based on your field experience, which technology solutions have proven most effective in supporting your security team? So with our organization, we had an onboarding process. It started in HR. They would set the credentials. And then in order to enter on a substation property, you had to have multiple training sessions. And then the way the path of flow ended up in 10 different departments. And then we would get it at the end so we can issue a access card to grant them access to substation properties.
That's actually one of the biggest challenges. When we started the company, the customer said, oh, what you did was great for the IT side, like they mentioned. They said, what do we do? One, to make security, in their words, frictionless, where the experience is very good. You are a new employee, you join the company. If it takes 2 weeks for you to get access, badge access, that's not a good experience. First impression, the last impression. How can we make it frictionless? Somebody joins as an employee, contractor, you're ready to go Monday morning, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. At the same time, you only have access to do your job. You cannot misuse that access. This is a big problem many of us don't know. There are people overcharge. Let's say you're a contractor, you're working for 20 hours. You could invoice for 30, 40, because you feel a big company, they can afford to pay me. You can even charge for overtime, even if you're working for less than 40 hours. So people game the system. How do you make sure that people do not game the system? So that's also very important. People are always requesting more access. Nobody ever comes to security to say, can you take my access away? How do we do that in a way where you, right from the beginning, you give people all the access to empower them to do the job. At the same time, you have the guardrails proactively. That is where they want to break the silo. So we work across HR, IT, physical security to make the whole process frictionless. With the technology, do have the intelligence to identify potential threats. By the way, on top of that, let's say you're traveling. You're in New York, you go to London for a week. Joey will be in London. How do you make sure when he goes there, his badge should automatically work? Or better yet, he could have a mobile credential. When you can board a flight with a phone, why can't you enter a building? But do it in a way where it's more secure than even the plastic badges. You can have real-time compliance and all. So I think that's where we come. So one of the things, if you are in critical sectors, we are talking about critical sectors, not only is it very important to protect those critical sectors, there can be very heavy fines. There's some of the sectors, aerospace and defense and all, the company that was fined over $300 million because they were paying so much attention to cybersecurity, no attention to physical security. People had access to areas where they shouldn't have had access. So physical GRC has become one of the biggest deals. So since they were a customer from the previous company, the CIO basically called me. He said, Jasveer, I need physical GRC. But that's not what you want to wait for. You want to proactively look at all your systems, just like you do pen testing, like just Chris mentioned. You also want to do physical security assessment, not manually, with the tools that will show you that, oh my God, 70% access people have is not needed. That's what we have seen for like Fortune 50 companies. So that's the kind of assessment you can do. I'm not trying to promote alert enterprise. I think you should do that, bridging the silos across HR, IT, physical security, and not be at the mercy of IT. Most of physical security has always been on the mercy of IT. Everything you want to do, oh, IT, I need IT. No, you shouldn't be. You should elevate your position where CSO has more visibility, more respect than anybody else in the company. It's very much possible. We'll be happy to help you. Thank you.
I'll just add, I kind of echo what Jasveer said, the tools that we're able to take those disparate sources of information together and help you start to build a picture so you can identify trends. One of the biggest things, going back to my military experience, we always look for what we called seams between units where people aren't communicating and exploit it. I think that's something that Chris would say for a pen tester, you're looking at the same thing. So finding the ways to bridge those communication gaps. Any technology that gets there, and there's a whole showroom floor down there full of them to look at, but highly recommend looking at the pieces that are going to really help you level up your ability to see what's going on. And then also the ones that are going to make sure that your security guard who's working the SOC at 3 in the morning on Saturday knows how to do what they're supposed to do, and that you can check that they're doing what they were supposed to be doing. Those are some of the big technologies that I look at that really take the human performance really into a very small factor.
When you look at the technology itself, we still see new technologies coming to market that don't support fully integrated and seamless capability for role-based access control. We still see devices coming to market that might have 2 or 3 access roles, and that's all they support. I would argue that if it's your system, it's your ecosystem, you're the system owner, you've got to be the one to say, we're not going to enable those choices. We're not going to choose those technologies. There are Band-Aids you can use. You can use a variety of tools to be able to say, okay, well, we're going to put a wrapper around this because this only has 2 roles, and we're going to put something in front of it you log into first. But you shouldn't have to do that in the current state of things. So be empowered to work with your procurement people. And if you're the vendor, to understand that your clients are going to require that you have the capability to fully integrate with those access control solutions.
Yeah, it's to consider that too. Walking the floor this morning as well, Security Operations Center, how everything is going to filter in and the data that you're going to receive and the AI connected to it as well. If an auditor comes in, they're going to want to look at checkpoints and how the automation happens. And there'll be all sorts of efficiencies out of that as well. So moving on to the next question. And this, even in the financial sector, I deal with this. quite a bit on third-party risk. And so what approach to managing third-party supply chain cybersecurity risk, especially when dealing with vendors who have access to critical systems? So this is kind of a two-part question where one, it's, how do you look at a vendor and proven technology and it works? And then once it's in, how do you manage those people coming in on looking at critical systems?
This is one of my favorites. I always talk about, how well do you need to know your vendors before you let them in to look at things. They want to come and they want to take you to lunch or they want to take you to dinner and, show you what they have and make themselves look good and try to get you interested. And if you're not careful, the next thing you know, you're going to end up with a vendor-transmitted disease. Okay? Nobody wants a VTD. So you need to make sure that you're really clear about vetting the vendors that you're going to engage with so that you understand what their capabilities are. Nobody can ever tell me the name of the HVAC vendor that caused the Target data breach. Nobody really cares. It was Target's breach. But it was the little mom and pop air conditioning vendor that caused that breach. And had they done their due diligence, they either would have said, we need to engage with a different vendor, or they at the very least would have put those guardrails in place to be able to say, okay, they need this access, but it doesn't need to be on all the time. We can turn it on, we can turn it off. We want to monitor everything they're doing while it's open, while they have that access. So there's a lot of missteps there that a proper vendor management program really would have mitigated. And it comes down to, does your vendor have the capability to be able to be an access point for your environment safely? That's how you have to look at it. You have to treat them as if they're a guard guarding a gate and they have the capability to open that gate. Or you have to say, no, we don't want to give them that. And they may have things in their contract that you have to go back and renegotiate. We've seen lots of situations where we've gone into critical infrastructure or even manufacturing, and we find that there is some sort of a remote jump host. And sometimes the system owner doesn't know it's there. We've caught more than one like that. And they'll put in, we found COVID came into play. We're at a large manufacturing facility, 2 million square feet, brand name you would know. And they put vending machines in for PPE and COVID tests. So they had gloves, they had masks, and the employees could just walk up and swipe their badge and get what they needed. Well, the thing they were swiping was a Windows 8 tablet that had a cell modem in it, and the other side of it was jacked into their manufacturing shop floor network. So basically bridging the critical infrastructure side with the internet. And we walked up and we could browse the internet from this tablet stuck on the front of this vending machine.
I would say, I think that the key that what Chris was getting there is you got to understand what systems you're allowing the vendors into and what they can do from that system. Because I'm sure that with Target, it's just the HVAC system. They didn't understand that you could then pivot off of that and then get into eventually the payment side. Yeah. I think that's the key, is really understanding not only the criticality of the system, but how is it linked and what can someone do from that? And that's really going to be the underpinning to all of it. Because if it is truly just your HVAC, then you probably don't need to go down to understanding where every employee who's going to be there's children go to school and who their teachers are, and any of that level that you might want to go with at a much more critical system. If you get to the nuclear side, and they can tell you where every single bolt was manufactured. There's different levels to that. It truly is risk-based, but to be risk-based, you have to truly understand the vulnerability that you're opening up.
I think the only thing I would like to add, you did an amazing job, is let's say as vendors, we are vendors, every vendor will say great things about themselves. There's no way I'll say, oh, we are not good. I'll say, oh, we are the best company in the world. So the best thing for you to do as a customer would be to talk to customers. I'm just taking an example, let's say in the banking sector. So rather than talking to us, oh, Ace Alert, and we'll say the best. But if you talk to a customer saying, you use Alert Enterprise, what do you think about them? That is where you will see the difference between the different vendors. Just like we have companies who do risk score, like for employees they do risk score, they do risks for vendors. So we would love to see when a customer says, oh, Alert Enterprise is the gold standard for physical security. We love that because now the customer is pushing us to be at that level where you become the gold standard. Once you impress one of the largest banks, guess what? Others will say, I think we should do that. So when you look at vendors, look at the ecosystem, look at the other customers who are using, look at the customers who are in very critical sectors. is this scalable technology? You can buy a technology, but if it takes 5 years to implement it, you have to do so much. That's not really fun. You need solution that can really scale. You need solution that can easily be implemented. At the same time, risk analysis. Are they really passing your tests for all the security thing that both Chris and Nick talked about?
Question 4, what practical advice do you have for organizations preparing for their first major security audit? So not everyone will go through this compliance audit. It may be a TRA, it may be an event. When I was working at the utility, there was 3 different gangs around, like the Crips, the Bloods, and there was drive-by shootings quite often. And it so happened there was a stabbing one day, and that perpetrator came in, approached my CEO. There was enough of us around. But what I had done was I wrote a document to make sure, if you're going to take any notes today, for physical security practitioners, make sure you have a roadmap plan and get it to the executives with some costs and budget. So that way, if anything happens, you can kind of cover yourself in saying, this is what I did. So after all of that, they did come through and they did an audit, but a lot of the audit findings were based on my roadmap and how I was securing the infrastructure. And when I reported up to the finance department, of course, he didn't want to spend the money to put up the proper gates and the fences and extra cameras that I requested. It was something difficult to do, but the CEO basically said, write yourself a check, you get what you need to do. So again, it could be some type of audit, but most of the time you can do a gap analysis. So maybe Nick, you've done enough audits.
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is keep in mind that an audit is really just a check-in. It's a snapshot in time. Don't fall into the trap of managing to an audit, particularly where you're externally regulated, because it depends on the audit team you get. Even when I was an auditor, it depended on what the workload looked like. If I was coming off of 3 weeks in a row of audits, I probably wasn't taking a real deep dive. Versus if it was after kind of the summer break and I had a few weeks to get out in the woods and recalibrate, I might dive a little deeper. So just keep that in mind. This is really just a quality check in the QA, QC world. So don't manage to the audits. I see here so many people talking about, we had a clean audit. Like, okay, who were your auditors? What have they been up to? What did they look at? Did they even look at some of your most violated standards? So that's one of the things I would say right up front, and train your executives that this is it's not good or bad. It's just, hey, here's a check-in. It's a pop quiz is really what it is. It doesn't really determine how well your program is working. With that said, I think you really do want to Joey's point, have your own internal standards, guidelines. Where do you want to be, and make sure the organization understands that, and that you have buy-in from the executives. If you come in and say, hey, we want to be at this tier, and your executives say, well, our appetite is down here, and we're willing to accept some of that risk, okay, document that really well, and then go to the agreed upon level. When you're prepping for the audit, the biggest thing you can do is practice. Just like anything else, it's exercises, it's testing, it's practicing, doing mock interviews. One of my favorite things as an auditor to do, and actually Darren Nielsen, who just stepped out, who's in here earlier, taught me this. My very first audit was to help de-escalate things, because people are naturally very, very nervous. Our very first audit, walk in, and Darren's a little bigger than me. The two of us standing right there, ask a guy to log into his PACS, and that guy couldn't have typed a single letter. He was shaking so bad, these two giant behemoths standing over his shoulders. And Darren just goes, well, John, would it help if we just stepped around the side of the rack and let you calm down? Yeah. So it's getting people through that mindset. When I do audit prep, one of the first things I usually do if I'm helping with that is I'll come in and I'll come up with the craziest questions I can think of, be really aggressive, kind of the same military training of a gallon of sweat saves an ounce of blood. Kind of that whole mindset of I'm going to make the prep so much harder than the audit, so the audit feels easy. And that's one of the biggest things, is just go through what are all the what ifs, what are the crazy ways this can go, and remind your subject matter experts that they know this information better than anybody else possibly could. So they don't have a wrong answer. The only wrong answer is just not answering, really. But if they know where to get the information, they know where to pull the data together, and that there might be some long days and long nights when you get in these external ones, especially if you haven't done the prep. But if you can spend the time, usually I would recommend between 3 and 9 months before an external audit, go through a mock audit, bring in somebody from the outside if you can, whether it's a peer group or hire a consulting firm. That's what they do. to really put you through all the paces of what to expect and find those gaps in your processes that are going to keep you up until 3 a.m. I know when I was at Grant, I heard horror stories of their previous audit where people didn't go home overnight. And I set the rule like, nope, we are all going to leave here no later than 7 p.m. You're going to be off work for at least 12 hours. And if we have to extend the audit, we'll extend the audit. Because I knew the auditors had plane tickets bought and they were going to be back on their plane Friday morning and go home. So we set that standard, though. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to work very efficiently. We're going to be effective. We put it in place. We had 3 people that managed all the data requests, all the RFIs that came in from the audit team, put them to the right subject matter experts. If the subject matter experts couldn't answer them, then we got them help. That was probably one of the other big ones is people tend to start overthinking. I remember there was one, I'd been out doing the physical security walkdowns and I came back in and our patch management team was just, they were literally spinning. You could see that the lights were on, but nobody was really tracking anymore because they had spent 3 hours trying to figure out what a very simple question meant. And the consultant we hired looked at it and said, guys, all they want is this one thing. So that's really what it is remembering to help people step back from the edge, pull themselves out of the weeds. That's some of the biggest things with audit. But again, it comes down to the audit prep and testing and knowing your job inside and out. And chances are your subject matter experts, there's nobody that knows that plant or that system better than they do.
What I've learned from the past, and it wasn't a compliance audit, it was just an auditor, was it PricewaterhouseCoopers came in. And it was a bit interesting because he actually worked with me to get the money I needed to upgrade my system because we both identified the vulnerability. And so he supported me on that. So again, if it's just a threat risk assessment, somebody coming in, you may want to work together with them to get what you need.
So one of the things we learned, I don't know how many of you have seen an article written by one of the utility CISOs. His name is Brian Harrell. He's very well known from Avangrid. He wrote an article from Stone Age to Digital Age with Physical GRC. I think this was one of the best articles written to the point that Nick was making, that an audit is a snapshot at one point of time. You could be in compliance 100% today, but an hour later, a day later, you could be out of compliance. Let's say somebody for critical assets, they need certain training, background certification. If that expired, the person still has access, you're out of compliance. So when he said, oh, we need real-time compliance. Yes, auditors come into audit, but they should be saying, yes, you're doing a good job. I should be in compliance 24/7. I cannot take risk. There's an incident that happened in the banking sector. One of the employees was let go. He came back and he killed 5 people because the whole process was, audit process is, when you let somebody go, their access should be terminated right away. They did it on IT side, but not on physical side. So physical security typically has been taken a backseat. So making sure, one, it helps you look good. Secondly, you should elevate that to level. Just like on IT side, they do, on audit that, they use tools and all. You should also bring it to that level that, your physical security audit has to be 24/7 compliance. And it's very much possible. And we can share that article with you if you like.
Yeah, so the next question is around the leadership, the awareness in the organization. So this is really, from top down to what I see for us was bottom up and getting people engaged, even on the financial sector. I'm training board of directors on, cyber, IT, and AI opportunities within the organization. And there's accountability at that board level. So what leadership strategies have you found most effective for building a security conscious culture across all levels of your organization, from executive leadership down to frontline operational staff who do not have a security background?
We do a lot of tabletop exercises. And the tabletop is a really good way to start to figure out where there are gaps in this type of a scenario. So operationally, when we're preparing for a tabletop, I always request to do some interviews, and sometimes the organization is a little bit confused about why I want that or who I want to talk to. Well, I want to talk to your finance people. I want to talk to your risk and insurance people. I want to talk to the business line leadership. I don't start with IT and cybersecurity and physical security. I do want to know what your technology stack is. I want to know who your vendors are and what the products are. But they don't have a huge play into why I'm interested in this. What I want to know is if you have only 2 people that can process payroll and they both go to the same event and they're out, take a step back and look at it from a crisis management perspective. What does your business continuity and disaster recovery planning look like to be able to make that happen? And then from there, you can back into those critical junctures. What are your critical business processes? And what happens invariably, because we do a lot of breach work, we get called into a breach and an organization has everything down, right? Cyber stuff's down, physical's down, the website's down, access control doesn't work. And the executives can't agree on what's most important. So when you talk about critical infrastructure isn't just, hey, we run a power plant or a water plant. Whatever your organization does, the pieces that you have to function are your critical infrastructure. Identify those in advance when everyone's calm and have candid conversations about, okay, well, we have to have this, but we could offload this to this other partner. Or maybe we've got a vendor who could come in and support this, and we can do this manually, right? People talk a lot about being able to like poison the water supply, thinking they're going to dump a little vial of something in when you'd have to back up tankers into a reservoir in most cases. Or power plants, right? Most substations can be operated in manual mode still. So they just send a person to that substation or to that lift station on the water side to make those operate. You may or may not have that capability, but you need to know what are your critical functions. And that's what's going to drive your capability to be able to understand how you need to protect yourselves.
Typically, I'm not sure you might have seen that. So people think about security as sort of a cost center. We have to spend money, not, for security. I think for you to think, putting myself in your shoes, CSO shoes, I want to look good. I want the CEO, CFO, CHRO should be thinking, oh, I think Jasveer is doing a good job. How do you transform security from cost center to business enabler? That is very, very important for you. You do that, you will have visibility right up to C-suite. And we have seen that with customers where, let's say, when you meet with your CHRO's whole thing is about workforce experience, productivity, safety. You say, absolutely. I am here to make the whole experience frictionless. Everything will work seamlessly and everything. And, work safety, violence, how it can be prevented. So CHRO is very excited. Go to the CFO. I can help you save tens of millions of dollars, which are being lost in, let's say, insider theft. It happens a lot. By the way, it's called inventory shrinkage. It's a multi-trillion-dollar problem. You call it inventory shrinkage. Companies have accepted. Yeah, I think that's cost of doing business. No, it can be prevented. So I think for you to have that message, yes, I can bring value. To the CEO, I'm protecting the brand. Imagine your company was fined a few $100 million and it impacts the company brand. You lose billions of dollars. There are companies that happens in one of the automated manufacturing companies just happened recently. Can you imagine? Then the people get fired, the whole team. Imagine you're at that level. No, I'm here to make sure it never happens here. Guess what? You will have the visibility. That is how you should be thinking. So I think your role is the most important role in the company because physical security has typically taken a backseat. Now it is time to bring it forward where you are the role model. That's how I feel, honestly, about you. Sorry, I was just so excited to share that with you.
Yeah, what we did within our organization, we created a SIP group, Critical Infrastructure Protection Committee. And what I developed, coming a bit of a finance background too, I related the numbers to events and what we're saving. But I also set up a maturity model. And the maturity model came from a gap analysis. Here we are. And here's where I'm going to go, but here's my costs. So having this SIP committee and exposed, IT, cyber, and the different groups within the organization, business continuity, at least, the KPIs to the CEO and maturity model spoke a lot. And next thing you know, my CEO would be walking down the hall and ask me how I'm doing on a project. It's like, wow, okay, you've got other things you've got to deal with. But that was a great optics and brand that maybe it was a strategy I used to elevate that.
One of the things that I did was early on, went to start to get to know everybody around the utility. I found that the security department had been kind of looked at as a department of no. When you go and ask something, they say no. I quickly flipped that and said, okay, when somebody asked me, I was like, okay, I'm not sure if we can do that. What are you trying to get done? Let's find a solution. And once I was able to get that done, we had people start bringing different projects to us, different things that they identified, vulnerabilities they'd seen that we just didn't have the bandwidth with 3 full-time staff and maybe a dozen contract guards. But I also learned I had a fantastic director who taught me to make sure I truly understood my audience. There was one project we had come up with around copper theft. It was $1 million a year loss for us, easily. And actually our line crew foreman brought it to me. He said, hey, we're losing at least $1 million a year in this. We're losing $100,000 in copper and $900,000 in labor just because of, that's how the nature of the beast. And I looked at it and said, okay, I've talked to some of my friends up at Chelan PD, like Mike Wilson over here, and they had a pretty good program going. So, okay, can we join arms on this? And let's start putting together a regional project. And for us, it was going to be like $300,000 for 3 years, and it would drop down to 1 FTE, so maybe $120,000 fully loaded at the time. My CFO didn't believe me. He said, you're going to get rid of $1 million loss for ultimately $120,000, $130,000 a year? And I had to walk him through that process. I actually had to walk him down one of the alleys near our headquarters to show the copper theft issue, but really put some of those losses right in front of him. But that came from meeting people where they were and understanding the audience. Kind of continuing that story, I took it to our COO. Hey, we're going to save $900,000 a year. And he goes, I don't care. He said, we're going to make your system more resilient. Oh, okay, now I'm in. Now I'm signing off. But that's really making that understanding of who you're talking to and what they care about at the end of the day. And trying to find ways to be helpful. We realized that with our security operations center, particularly after business hours, from 5 p.m. till about 7 in the morning, we had a lot of bandwidth. Not high skill, but we had a lot of bandwidth. So we went to our IT team, who was having problems with their after-hours help desk. They were finding that one technician would bill 15 minutes for a call, and another would bill an hour. But there wasn't enough data in there to understand, was there really an hour of work? I said, you know what? Run everything after hours through our SOC. Give me a script that a $15 an hour guard can follow, and let me know when you want things escalated and what's going to get delayed. So now not only were we being helpful, we were, again, getting over that hump of we're not the Department of No. We're going to be a business enabler. We're going to help you save money somewhere else. And there's a lot of opportunities in security to do that because you touch literally everyone in the organization.
That's exactly why I'm talking about having the business unit leadership involved in those resilience discussions, because sometimes IT and cybersecurity and physical security doesn't understand what the business sees as the most important functions. And so you have to get there, and you're not going to get there if you don't ask the question and engage those conversations.
Yep.
What are your practical approaches for deploying new technologies such as cloud? We're starting to hear more about cloud services, software as a service, and AI technology. It could be in critical infrastructure, but just in general. When you start thinking about data, latency, where that data resides, and while you're still trying to leverage, advanced capabilities of threat detection and operational optimization.
Let everybody throw everything into the AI of their choice, right? That's what we do. You just feed your CRM right into ChatGPT and see what it spits back at you. Yeah. No, for any organization that has any sort of sizable sales or marketing infrastructure, this has been a big challenge, because those groups want access to these tools. They want to be able to do the data mining. They want to be able to throw stuff into some advanced analytics and get that benefit. Your finance people want to do it too. They want to look for discrepancies in accounts payable and accounts receivable and the problem clients and the somebody who's not paying attention or maybe doing things they shouldn't be doing with their expenses. So how do you manage that? And it really comes down to understanding what do they want and what are you willing to allow your data to be used for? And so as I'm in a position where this question comes to me in our organization. And I say, okay, what is it you want to do? Well, we would like to be able to have a bot that sits in our meetings and records. Okay, what are you going to do with that data? Well, it's just note-taking, all right? But what happens if you mention something that's client-sensitive and now it's in the cloud? Oh. So a lot of times it's just a matter of educating them. Say, okay, you want to do this, then we need to be sure that if there's going to be client-sensitive things that are discussed, that are specific, that you can't have the bot in those meetings. Or we could look at having one that runs locally that doesn't go to the cloud. If all you need is the note-taking and transcription, you can do that much more safely using other mechanisms. Once again, we're back to guardrails. Understand what it is that you want to do, or if you're a product company and you want to go AI-enabled with your capabilities, you can build and train your own large language learning models, the LLMs, that are going to be utilized for the analytics within your own infrastructure without going out and buying the ones that are sitting out in the cloud. And you can still put them in the cloud and that you can have your clients interacting with them in a space that you control, but not in just a publicly available model. So it really comes down to, and we've talked a lot about this, but what is it you're trying to accomplish? What is the data? What controls are you supposed to have around that data? So for instance, you don't probably want the note taker running in HR conversations. Or maybe you do, but you have to understand then that that data has to be very tightly controlled, because depending on where you are, what the jurisdiction is, you may have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 different regulations from different jurisdictions that you have to adhere to.
I think one of the things I'd like to add, and this is based on the real customer feedback and the experience we have, because we work in very sensitive sectors, banking, energy, oil and gas, chemicals and all, aerospace and defense and so on, federal sector. So where one of the biggest things is, most of you know about GDPR compliance, privacy. Physical security has a lot of information that has privacy information. For example, yes, you know where people are, when people were in the buildings. A lot of this is private information. People don't like to be known, oh, I was in this building for this to this hour, you're monitoring me and all. So I think you want to use that information in a way that is used for the positive things. Let's say you're improving their experience, you're improving their safety. When you see the example I was using, Joey going from New York to London, making sure that his badge works. At the same time, did he reach there safely? Is he there? If he didn't reach there, is he okay? But doing all of that in a way where it's a positive thing. So one, when people ask for the information, making sure you do not share information that's confidential or share in a way where it's compliant. Secondly, I think what you should do, rather than IT is far ahead, or HR is far ahead in building their AI agents. Actually, physical security should have their own agents. We know examples of customers who are saying, oh, I want a workplace agent. I do not want to rely on somebody else. So you, rather than you are sitting taking a back seat, you should drive that. So now it's your agents. You know the information, you're automating the thing rather than somebody else does it for you. So one, it gives you visibility to the top like we were talking about earlier. Secondly, your example, you have all the control for all the data rather than somebody else does it for you and then you don't even know what happened. So that's my suggestion. And by the way, this is real customers who are doing it today. So they say, Erica, who is everybody safe in this building? Can you imagine when you show that, for your HR, they'll be, your CHR say, oh my God, you are amazing. You solved my problem. Otherwise, I'm calling so many people. So now you have that visibility rather than somebody else does it for you. So take charge.
So one of the items that we've always talked about is that whole physical cyber convergence. And in our industry, you would have IT, you have OT, which is operational technology. Those are the guys that are running the power grids. And then you have physical security. And so we're trying to bring more of a holistic approach. I just wrote an article in Utilities Security magazine on this topic because I think it's important and everybody's kind of has to work in the same direction. So what are the practical strategies do you recommend for organizations struggling to get buy-in from both IT and physical security teams when implementing this whole unified security approach around really a governance perspective?
I'll jump in and make it all about risk. That's what it comes down to ultimately. And whether it's dollars and cents for the finance people, whether it's availability for the operations people or safety in general. But if you can dial everything else down to risk, that strips away physical versus cyber, OT versus IT, and it gets down to what keeps the company running, kind of to Chris's point. What are those critical systems? What are the things we absolutely have to do to make sure we're still here tomorrow?
So this is a real customer story. Most of you know, I remember, there was one of the Super Bowls where there was a power outage for like 10, 15 seconds, which felt like it went forever. It was here. So it was here actually, in New Orleans.
It was here.
So there was after that, one very high profile utility, their CEO said, so let's say, Super Bowl is going on, a substation is feeding all let's say somebody doing maintenance work over there. Can you imagine at the same time? So the CEO said, I need to know how many people have access to our substation. Nobody knew. So he said, we don't even know. These are like crown jewels. Somebody can change few relay settings in a substation, can create a power outage. We don't even know how many people have access. Then somebody goes to a substation at 11 p.m. in the night. Do I send a guy with a gun or a guy with a wrench? Because this could be one of our most hardworking employee, contractor, trying to catch up on work. And the last thing he wants to do is to show up with a gun. That's not a good reward for hard work. On the other hand, it could be a disgruntled person who was let go a few days ago, is there to do harm. And the last thing you want to do is to show up with the wrench, because this person could have a gun. How do we know what is going on? Nobody goes to substation for fun. He said, I want to know, is somebody going there? Is somebody going there to really fix a problem? So that was the first time we said, oh my God, here is an opportunity for us to really bridge the silos across IT, physical, OT, the things we were talking about. When somebody is going there, why are you going there? Are you trained or certified and all? That is the example that, like bridging the silos across IT, physical, OT, manually impossible. That is where you can leverage a technology to normalize data, because these systems are very, very different. I think like both Nick and Chris shared, they're very, very different kind of system. Same people cannot look at everything. So I think that is where you want to normalize data across all these systems to be able to identify a potential threat before something happens. Physical security is always there when something happens. You always incident response. Most of the time you talk about, oh, incident happened, here's we guards and guns, there. But how can you mitigate a potential threat? When people see, oh my God, I go to a substation for no reason and I get a message, Jasveer, I try to go there, do you need help to go to this floor? I say, oh my God, somebody is watching. People start behaving when you proactively identify things. So banking sector, there are requirements, legal requirements. If you have access to trading floor, you should not have access to investment floor. That's conflict of interest. But there are two ways to, one, obviously you don't want to give access to both floors, but even if somebody is trying to go there, you say, okay, Nick, you were trying to go there. Do you really need? So now, oh, I think I better not do something. Or if he needs access, then he will say that. So that is where I think physical security has an opportunity to be at the forefront rather than, responding to something. That's the slide about. So it's a very, very, it's used all over by the way. This was a big deal 2 weeks ago. This is one of the largest security event. 400 utility. That's where this was the theme of the whole thing, that why are we living in silos? We need to bridge silos, stay ahead of the bad guys. Bad guys are exploiting silos and we live in silos. That's not a good thing. We need to bridge silos. So that's what it is.
I'll jump in on that as well. One of the next pieces to do with that is exercise it. Kind of like Chris mentioned earlier, if you make your exercises realistic, they'll actually be helpful. I had a client who they were doing a once every 6 months NERC CIP 14 exercise. It's not required, but they said if we're going to spend all the money to put these in place, we want it to work. And our first one, we had a couple people from the operations side who started off the day in the back of the room, arms crossed, I don't know why we're here. And we started going through the scenario, and you see him kind of slowly, arms come down and then leaning forward. And at lunchtime, one of them came and said, we're actually kind of a little worried about this. And I said, oh, great, you're on the planning team next time. So he was one of the trainers for the system dispatchers. So we sat down and said, okay, if I'm planning out bad guy's going to shoot up your substation, this is how I'm going to do it and walk it down. And these are where the security sensors will ping, and this is what you should see. And he goes, oh, we'll also get an operational. We get a low gas alarm on this breaker, or we'll get low oil here. So we built a scenario where we were able to take away some of the security pieces, but show the operational and how that an active shooter or a shooter at a guns or at a substation would look to an operator who wasn't seeing what the SOC was seeing. Got really creepy when we were getting ready for our third exercise and got canceled because the weekend before, 3 of their substations were shot. Makes you kind of look over like, okay, who's been reading my homework? But the real big takeaway from it is that they were at substations that didn't have security sensors because they were smaller distribution ones. But because their operators had exercised enough to know, 1, low gas is kind of, okay, that happens. 2, okay, that's a little bit weird. 3, somebody's probably shooting our substation. So they de-energized the substation and the other ones as they started to see this attack unfold. And they were able to recover, I think, in less than 2-3 weeks at the very top end. Versus other side of the country, somebody who didn't do that and they had to buy a new transformer and it took about 2 years. So that's a huge difference in those two. Of you do the exercises, you bring everybody together and say, okay, what did you learn from this? Operational dispatcher. What would you have done different? And truly ask the questions. You'll start to bridge some of those gaps just out of the curiosity piece. But then you're actually prepared for when it does happen.
There's another operational add-on that you get from doing some of that stuff. Another example anyway. After the Metcalf substations shooting, a lot of the larger utilities started putting in thermal cameras, and they would do thermal tours of the substation. So not only were they looking, could they see at night, they could see bodies and things like that, but it became part of their predictive maintenance. So if they come across and they see hotspots and they've got trending from every night we do this, and all of a sudden this transformer's 30 degrees hotter, what's going on? Preventive maintenance, predictive maintenance, they're able to make changes and save themselves a lot of money. A lot of utilities found some economies of scale by doing that.
Everything we talked about, these are probably 2 good slides to take pictures of. Integration implementation, so this is cyber secured, just your entire ecosystem, secure it, proven technology, make sure that it's been tested, and also look at your total cost of ownership, supply chain, product, know where the product is, and maybe look at third-party access control, zero trust approach, compliance, it's that gap analysis we talked about, risk management assessment, look at your risk tolerance, make sure your organization knows that here's the risk and how much will they actually really respond to that if there's a tolerance component to it. Leadership, get involved with your C-suite. And then also this slide here, recovery plans. We just talked a bit about all the extra training, run the disaster recovery plans as well, regular exercise. I've got cloud, it's a shared responsibility. It's going to be your vendor, end users, integrator, all part of if you go cloud infrastructure, AI governance, policies. And then we just talked about the physical and cybersecurity convergent, holistic risk assessment. And then when you're bringing on technology, it's IT, OT, and physical security. And then just the emerging threats. You're in finance, it's ransomware that I'm seeing that we're dealing with. Supply chain attacks, your patch upgrades, and then your edge devices as well. So I think there might have been a question at the back earlier. We only got a couple of minutes left. So does anyone have any questions? So C-level objection when you present something to them. We've got about a minute or two.
Yeah, if the C-level person's the decision maker has had an operational role as they've come up through their career, especially if they're long tenured in the organization, a lot of times you'll get well, that's not how we do things. That's not how we've done it. And so that aversion to change is one of the biggest challenges. So you have to be able to show them that what you can do and what you can provide is an improvement.
I think the biggest one I've seen, there's 2 of them I've seen. One is it's finance, it costs money. The other one is efficiency impacts. That's the one you see from somebody who's come up with the operations. Oh, this is going to make my crew take an extra 5 minutes. So those are usually the 2 biggest ones I've seen. So it's breaking that down. It's okay, it's going to cost an extra 5 minutes until they get used to it, and then it'll take 2 minutes. But they're also going to gain this on the back end and help them understand that risk piece of what they're getting when they trade for that time.
And I'll give you a good real world example of that is if you have operator consoles, right, and shift change, they don't want to log out and log in because they lose telemetry. So put 2 consoles side by side. Okay, you're going to come on, new person's going to log out and log in as this one, and then you switch. You can't just leave those logged in generically. That's a huge problem in the current state of things. They have to be logged in as themselves.
I think my favorite one we had with that, we put a new PAC system in. I told them it didn't support shared passwords. They believed me, so that's how we killed that.
Jazzer, you want to end?
Yes, I definitely want to add. I think because we sell at the C-suite level, and you won't believe, I think many times when you share with them the right value, I have personally seen a Fortune 10 EVP level person. He said, Jasvi, why is not everybody doing that? I love that question. So I think sharing the value in a way, one, it obviously, like we were talking about, brand of the company is very, very important. You're one of the biggest banks. So depending upon the sector, brand, everybody is very, very important. Secondly, saving money. Who will say, I do not want to save $100 million? No, nobody will say that. And then here is the risk we are living. If we don't do this, guess what? Somebody XYZ had $300 million fine. Can we afford that? Once you present that kind of value, obviously you want to do the homework for that particular sector, sharing, here's how it happens. And then plan, like you were talking about maturity model. Here's what we need to do. Immediate thing, we need to do this, and this is how we bring value, and we will focus on the crown jewels. Every company has so many assets, but there's certain assets which are very important. For oil and gas company, let's say your refinery, if the refinery is down for a week, you're losing in billions of dollars. Can you afford to take that risk? If you don't do that, spending few $1 million is nothing when you see the savings of billions of dollars, especially when those kind of incidents are happening. So I think that's what really helps. Yeah.
Lastly, if you want after this session, just come see me. I've got all these reports here. I don't want to bring them back on the plane. So that really everything that we talked about today, I kind of summarized it here. But on behalf of the panel, I want to thank you everyone for attending today's session. Thank you.